Welcome to the Two and a Half Brothers podcast, where we discuss FPL views and strategy, but most importantly, our monthly league. We've got over 500 entries now, so we'll be closing that in the next day or two. The top five places for August will receive a prize of 20 quid or a 20 quid Amazon voucher. Check our website, brothers-fpl.com, for rules and contact details. TikTok is probably the quickest way to get a hold of us, so do leave us a message either privately or in the comments there. We'd like to introduce the third brother this week. He's here revealing his draft. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much. Long time coming, long time overdue, but we are here. Good to be here. And I've been an avid listener over the last 4 weeks, so kudos for getting it started. But the main event is now here. So
I would describe you as a vibes-based manager. Could you give us just a very quick overview of how you approach the game, particularly for the monthly format that we usually play?
I'd probably agree with you. Vibes-based management is my style, with maybe a smattering of eye test and a very small helping of stats, XG, deltas, and all that usual stuff. I like to go with players that don't impact the game as I watch it in real life on a screen. So I like players that have excitement. I do like a half decent defense, but yeah, I'm mainly here for players that excite. And not to rip up the template. I think there's definitely a bit to the template that you need to have and that I have in my first draft. But I like players that are exciting. I also like the occasional punt. As we saw last year with my horrendous Welbeck pick. I think for the only period of the season where he blanked for about 7 games in a row. So yeah, but vibes is a neat summary, I think.
Cool. So, on the
And good.
subject of templates, we've got your draft. If you could pick that up, Gemmers. We noticed that you've got no Salah, which is an approach I'm also taking for the time being. So we are both Derby County fans, so we've seen a fair amount of the teams that have been promoted this year over the last few seasons. Anything stand out, particularly concerning how weak the promoted teams have been the last few years? Do you see a repeat of that, or
I see a stronger three, I think, coming up this season. I think it's fairly better known now that Burnley are so unbelievably stubborn at the back. I think it took a few weeks for that to marinate up from EFL enthusiasts into kind of Premier League knowledge, but they're likely to build out a similar style of play, which is right for the league anyway. So it's better teams, being defensive. It isn't a bad strategy for them. The challenge that you have is you can't load up your team with a promoted team who are good at the back in the Championship because that doesn't always replicate in the Premier League. But if you look at Estev's a good example of a player that will probably play when needed, you could throw him in. But ultimately, Burnley are still going to concede. So I think an eye on Burnley's defence is worthy. I doubt they'll be as stubborn or anywhere close to as they were last year. Leeds are exciting. I think Leeds will stay up. I looked at ways I could get Pirro into my team. I think he'll be good this year. I don't think he'll be that good. But it all depends on whether Leeds bring additional firepower in. But last year he was outrageous. Very clinical, high quality player. And I did think could I float with getting him in the side. Dan James again. I think he'll get returns this season.
I had
And
Dan
then
James in once or twice?
he'll play. He's signed a new contract as well, so they like him. He's a good player. If Leeds are purring, he's quite capable of getting an assist. But it's just hard to get them in your first 11 with any strategy.
Is Pirro 5.5?
He's 5.5, which I think is a fair price. I think you'll get returns for that. It's who you don't pick for 5.5 if you go for him. So I think my strategy with all three promoted teams, because I like the look of Sunderland. I think they'll be fierce at home. I think they're signing some good players. We've got Maenda and Lefay last year were outrageously good. But it all depends on who they sign in the next couple of weeks. So I think my strategy for all of them, bar Esteve, who I think will be a good quality signing, and you could bring in if need be for a given game week, is to just see how they do. And give it the first few game weeks to see what the sort of ebb and flow of those teams looks like. and then go from there. It's very tempting to bring in Pirlo, so I might still reserve the right to do that to give me a bit more firepower somewhere else. But at the
Yeah,
moment, I'm on the fence with doing it, and it's
yeah.
probably
That
going to be
that
Ramsey instead.
that
It's
million
playing.
goes a long way, right? Down from Delap.
Absolutely right. Yeah. So, I could upgrade several players if I brought Piro in for say a Delap, but then we'll get on to Delap later. He's a bit of a punt that I really like the look of,
Okay,
and I'll explain the reasons for that later down
cool.
the line. But yeah, championship teams I think will be stronger this year. I still think they'll probably all still go down, bar maybe Leeds, who might just about scrape it.
Cool. Interesting. Thanks. So there are a couple of interesting picks in your side, players that I've not seen in that many drafts. Starting with Gibbs White for 7.5 million. What's the thinking there?
So he probably falls into my having a bit of a punt category. I like him anyway, so Ingham shirt on here, but Derby fan, so it pains me to put him in anyway. Um, but he's a punt, and there's two reasons why I think he's worth backing. In my first draft, the first is that he finished the latter half of the season strong. I think, given all the shenanigans around moving to Spurs, not moving to Spurs, Marinakis sort of pulling the strings on him signing a new contract. I'm back in here that he'll have a point to prove, and he does like to get forward. I think he'll be given license to roam in a Forest team that are fairly strong at the back typically, but that need that flair. I think he'll provide that. And my punt with Gibbs White is the first 4 to 6 games will see him get a good amount of returns. Again, I might be wrong. He's a bit of a punt, but I think yeah, I think he'll have a point to prove. And I think City, sorry, Forest at home with him having a point to prove, will just fire him up. And I think he'll have a good season. And I don't like saying that, and I hope he doesn't from a Derby perspective, but from an FPL perspective, I think he'll be the one to watch in the first 8 to 10 games. But he is a little bit expensive, so maybe you can chip in with the players I could have from not having that punt, who I think might have made some of your midfields in both of your drafts.
Yeah, so I'm on Anderson from Forest, but for the defensive side of things, really. We have pulled a quick table together showing his goal involvement from last year, and it ranks pretty far down, to be honest. If you can grab that for us, Jake.
Go on, put me out of misery.
So he's off the page at the moment. I think it was around 11 expected goal involvements, and
I
you
can
can
see him. There he is.
you can get way more value for money, even far below his price point. But at that level, you're not too far away from players like even Verts, Kuna, and Bumo.
Can I tell you what this table doesn't factor in?
Yeah,
And that's a
please
point to
do.
prove. And that's fans to win over. And that's a new contract. And again, it can go one way or the other, right? It can go new contract, I'm on the beach, I got my 300 grand for the next 4 years. Or it can go, do you know what? These City fans deserve the best of me, and this is my season. That doesn't make for nice reading at face value. He definitely had a good tail end of the season. I know Forrest wilted somewhat, but he looked strong on the eye test. But again, it's quite telling how far you've got to scroll. Although I do see Bowen quite high up on that list, which we can
You,
get to shortly.
you do. That's a nice segue into your Bowen pick, Jake. If you can go back to the team. So he's obviously got a really good record. We all know about Bowen. He's involved. My fear is that West Ham just don't create enough. Like it felt last year when we were watching the West Ham games, they wouldn't create much at all, and then he'd smack one in kind of late in the game, which is obviously really good. And that opening fixture looks pretty juicy as well. Um, my fear is just, yeah, West Ham might not be that good this year.
Yeah. So as you'll know over the seasons, I absolutely love Bowen. I love his ability to, even when a fairly average West Ham aren't playing well, I love his ability to grab a game by the scruff of the neck and just find a way to get a goal or assist. So I think he got me a lot of the points when I won one of the months last season. He got me a lot of the points to land that month's victory. And he's a player I like category, but he's also in a player that I don't really have to think about. Like he's so consistent. I know he's not on penalties. Well, depending on whether Paquetá stays, but I know he's probably not going on penalties. But he's so consistent. He always gets the minutes. And I want a few players across my draft that I don't really have to worry about. That's not to say that if he goes, 8 to 10 games, which is probably what I'll allow him to find his form. If he goes 8 to 10 games and he's looking really, really ropey and West Ham just aren't doing it, I'll move him out. But I don't think that'll be the case. And I think West Ham will be a little bit stronger this season. I'm not saying they're going to blow up trees, but I don't think they'll struggle quite as much as they did, certainly for the first half of last season. And he's just so nailed. And I almost owe it to him to keep him in for the start of the season. He was so glorious. Every time I thought I'm going to have a bad game week, he'd pop up with a goal and assist. And you were there in the chat, across Super Sundays and whatnot. When West Ham scored, you didn't even need to look. Something in that goal was to do with Bowen. So, and he's just glorious, and he's a nice lad apparently. So that always helps. I like a few nice fellas in my team.
Cool. Yeah, fair enough. So
So
moving
I
on
take
to
it he's not in either of your drafts, right?
no, he's quite popular though. He's fairly well owned. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but Jake, if you click the badge,
Yeah, bring that up.
And what's your reason for not having him? Given his
20%.
consistency, his
it's an awkward price
fairly,
point.
fairly
He's
good
moved
consistency.
from midfield to striker, which will affect his
Yep.
Mm,
total points. Um,
Yep.
I just haven't got the money for that slot with my team structure. So if we move on to
Fair.
onto that note, you've obviously got a Haaland, no Salah team.
Yep. Yep.
I can see Verts in there. We discussed on the last podcast that I think Verts is just really good value. It's not a Mo Salah coverage pick. He's there in his own right, and I think Haaland and City will have a much better season. Can you give
Yep.
us just your brief
So,
thoughts on that?
so he was originally in. So I'd never planned to go Salah. I think there'll be, a much kind of a much even spread of goals across this Liverpool team this season. So part of my early thinking was that he'd be coverage. Having watched a bit of him in pre-season, I think he'll be integral to a lot of what Liverpool do. And I just can't see a world where I'd prefer if I'm going Haaland or I'm going Salah. I can't see a world where I'd prefer Salah at the moment. I think City will be incredibly strong this year, and I got bitten last season by Haaland. I had him way too long early on. City looked kind of ropey across, good swathes for the first few months, and I kept him in, and it really punished me because Salah was absolutely firing during that time, and I didn't own him.
I think I had to
Um,
wildcard in game week 3,
yeah.
having watched a couple of those City games.
Yeah,
It was
yeah, and
just
I stayed loyal because I know he's a beast, but I think this is the season where they really play to his strengths, and I can see some big returns from him. And if you were to ask me to put percentages, out of 100%, how much onto Salah, how much onto Haaland, I'm 80-20. I'm all in on Haaland. I think he's the first player I put in my draft. I think he'll be, you know, probably the highest point scorer this season. And I think we'll still get a lot out of Mo, but I don't see him doing the same this season as he did last season. And he'll probably prove me wrong, like he does every year. But yeah, it's on the Haaland steam train for me this season.
yeah, I agree on the Liverpool front. I think their signings are so strong. I can imagine those points being spread across their attackers more than they
Yeah,
were last year. Whereas for Haaland, all of those new signings are going to be feeding him basically.
exactly right. And he's also a year older. Like, he was like unbelievable Salah last year, but he is a year older. And
We are
you
of
know,
we are of a slightly older vintage than that, and it does catch up with you quick. Obviously, he's an elite athlete, but you've got all of this to come, Jake, in time.
yeah, you have. I, I
Mm.
I agree, and I think once you hit late 20s to mid 30s, each of those years you feel far more, and it's just you can't afford both. If he was 9 million, he'd be straight in, but he's so expensive. I saw a clip of him saying, "Make me cheaper to the fantasy Premier League fellas," and I was like, "Yeah, if you were 9 million, you'd be straight in." But
This
at north of 14, it's a non-starter, and I'll just reserve the right, in the first 6 to 8 games, which is what I like to give. I like to try and give that to players. I'll reserve the right to swap Haaland out for him, but I don't suspect I will.
So I'm currently Salah and no Haaland. Do you think I should be worried?
I don't think you should be worried. I just think for me, with the information we've
Mhm.
got at the moment, if you're not having both, I think it's a hard sell to point to Salah doing more than Haaland. With the players that City have brought in, the way they're going to be playing. They also finished so strong last year, and what you tend to find is, teams that go and have a really, really storming season have take some of that momentum from the last season into the next season when they then, sort of have the consistency across, the full breadth of games. And I don't think that that's going to be Salah this year, but it feels like City have got the energy, got the momentum, and the new signings that will just play to Haaland's strengths. I mean, you could look at ways to get both in, but for me, that just leaves you so thin across, areas of positions in the team that I like to fill with, interesting players that it just doesn't work for me. But I mean, you could look at both, but yeah, don't bring Haaland in; it'll make it more exciting. So
No,
stick to
yeah,
your guns, Gemma. Stick to your guns.
It's going to
yeah,
be exciting
that's
because
it.
Haaland's 20% owned.
Oh well.
That's outrageous. Yeah, I don't know I don't know the reasons for that, but maybe it's just price or seller bias from last season. But yeah, I think what clocked how low owned he was. So yeah, we've got ourselves a diff somehow, an expensive diff. But yeah, go Haaland.
Cool. So you've got another player that's fairly low owned in the lap. João Pedro is over 50% owned for Chelsea.
Yeah,
I think you're a big Delap fan, aren't you?
I love him. You can see from my background, I'm a Suffolk boy. I mean, that's Felixstowe and Walton where I live. But yeah, having watched him a little bit in the flesh and just liking his general, that don't give a hoot persona on the pitch, the way he sort of gets about players and also the way he can finish. I absolutely love him. And so his goals in some of the preseason games, just a quick ball in flash goal, good quality penalty in what was about 30 minutes of football. I think he'll ask a lot of questions of of the Chelsea kind of first choice striker over the course of the season. My one worry with him is that I'll just get bitten by minutes and Pedro's ability to do that R9 business and just score and then do nothing and then score. So I am worried. I wouldn't say Delap is a lock yet. I think I'll be gutted if I end up taking him out.
Where would
And
you potentially go if he's not? I've got Strand Larson in my team at the moment. I think he's a similarly really good finisher. I think he's
so
probably
I
value.
had Strand Larson and he did a great job for me last season as well as Strand Larson. I had him in before I properly locked Bowen into the side. So I think I put a bit more money into I think I had Bruno and not Gibbs White at that point. But I just really want Bowen this season. And yeah, so I probably look at Strand. Raul had a good run for me last year. Again, I like him. He sort of he gets about, he knows how to finish. He scored some lovely goals in pre-season. So it's probably going to be Raul or Strand Larson, probably the latter. But I think if you to ask me, come kickoff for game week one, do I still have to lap in? I think the answer is going to be yes. I want to see how he does, and it'll be so satisfying if he can score from the bench and then force his way in and get all those Pedro owners to have to sell Pedro because he's been outmuscled by the outmuscler in the lap. But
I
yeah,
think
we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I think going Pedro to Delap would be out of the frying pan and into the fire, to be honest.
Absolutely right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And obviously we don't. I suspect Chelsea will be good this year. I think they'll be a lot stronger. I think they'll click, be a lot more cohesive than they were last season. But I just don't think you can put them both in that side. So, how they shake out over the first 10 game weeks is going to be really exciting. And some Chelsea fans that I was reading commentary on and said, look, let's find a way to get them both in. You look at how Gittins gets used and, sort of how the side can accommodate two high quality strikers. But I just don't see that working or being the style that Maresca ends up going for. So I think it's going to be one or the other, which is great depth and strength for them, but not so easy for us trying to find one or other in our fantasy teams. So it might be that it's just too chaotic to have either, but I'm pretty sure I'll start with the lap, just because he's been fun to watch for Ipswich, and because I think he's a quality player.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, I've got one more question on your team regarding the defenders. I can see Ait Nuri is your attacking premium. Anything in particular over, say, Munoz or Kirkez that lands you
So
on
he's
him?
Yeah, so he feeds the way that I think City will be stronger this year, be more fluent. He was so ridiculous for Wolves. Like part of me wants to see what he does in a City team with that same, marauding back to front, just consistently. I know you guys pulled up his heat map. I think it was in the last discussion. I think he'll have a field day in that City team, and I almost owe it to him from last season to try him again this year. I looked at Guardiola, I looked at Munoz. Munoz again was a joy to own last year, but I have the budget for City. Ike Nori is a player that I enjoy watching, so he kind of ties a little bit back to that. If City are playing, I'll quite enjoy watching him because I like how he plays. I like how he's a bit of a headless chicken, but he seems to get in the right space at the right time. So part of it is game fun for me, but there are probably statistically slightly better picks than him. But I'm never a fan of Guardiola, and it might be that I end up eating my words. But without Trent this season, Ike Nori's kind of my fun at fullback alongside Wan-Bissaka. I mean, if I could have all three of my defenders being the sort of fun to watch sort of back to front players, but alas, we need to put some consideration onto DEFCON, don't we? Which is why Milenkovic
It,
is strutting over there.
it, it is interesting to see a much more attacking side after sitting through Steve's DEFCON, Death by DEFCON last week. Yeah. So whilst he's sat ticking his tackles and contributions off, we can watch the game and have some fun,
Yeah,
which
and
is
I
nice
mean,
to see.
I mean, just on Milenkovic, I think I've been doing the hokey cokey with Milenkovic, Murillo, Tarkovsky, all of those that you think
Mhm.
are going to be tapping at DEFCON, but I just don't want a team of. I'd rather take a punt on assists and goal contributions for at least some of the defense than be too focused on DEFCON points. But it'll be interesting to see what the first 10 games looks like between goal contributions and DEFCON points from some of the kind of popular picks across the defense and the midfield. So but yeah, I haven't gone too aggressive at bringing players in. I did for some drafts. Like I say, I had Tarkowski was doing the rounds. Murillo was in, Milenkovic has been in and out, but I'm not wedded to biasing that over attacking returns, I don't think.
If we get 4 weeks in and none of the attacking defenders have any returns, and you feel like you're 30 points behind the DEFCON team, would you
Yeah.
pull the trigger on a wild card or a couple of transfers?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. My strategy this year was to try and I burnt transfers way too willy-nilly last season. So I think yeah, if the data early on looks like it needs to go a bit heavier towards DEFCON and a bit lighter towards attack and returns, fine. It will just be less of a fun game for me to watch. Yeah, so some of it comes down to who are the better players for me, attacking wise, that I'll enjoy watching, versus who are the players that might do well in DEFCON and nudge me into a few more points per game week. But if it's Stark, I want to do well in the league. So I want, I started like an absolute stinker last season for the first half, and then had a really, really strong second half of the season. So I want to improve on kind of that performance, which I know you'll tell me was about top million. But if you look at the second half performance, it's probably top 100K. So I want to keep that momentum going. So I do need to be a bit more mindful of a few less punts, a bit more of an eye on data and general trends, and that might be DEFCON versus attacking returns. Um, so yeah, good question then.
Cool. So we've got a few minutes left. Are there any players on your horizon that aren't in your team yet that you really fancy that you just can't quite fit into this structure or don't have the budget or prefer
Yeah,
to leave?
so oddly, and I've never had this view before, and you'll love this, Gemmas, but I really want Bruno this year, and he
Nice.
sits in the Bowen bucket of I can probably just leave him. I haven't got as far as I can recall any United or have had any United apart from a slight flirtation with Bruno in an earlier draft, but I think he'll be good this year. I think it depends where they put him. So is he likely to be, sort of in the classic centre mid spot, or is he going to, have a bit more license to roam further forward? So it he came back out because it's too early to tell, what the dynamic between him, Cunha, Bomo, and various other signings that they make, how they impact where he plays and how he plays. But I think he'll be a strong bet. But for now, he's out. I flirted with the idea of Ekitike, how do you pronounce
Yeah,
that? I flirted with the idea of him. He looked absolutely stellar in preseason, or he has looked stellar in preseason. And he feels to me like a player that will just hit the ground running, and he'll cause me headaches in the first 3 game weeks by just being a real focal point for Liverpool and being central to a lot of what they do. So I think he'll end up in my team at some point. I just don't know if I'm prepared to take the gamble on pre-season potential impact versus what it looks like in the first 2 3 game weeks. But Verts covers a bit of that risk, I suppose. But I think
yeah.
I
And the
think
Isaac,
yeah,
the Isaac
yeah.
situation's up in the air as well, isn't it? But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I've got no interest in Isaac is an absolute don't touch for me. Like, until we know what's going on with him. I mean, Watkins again. He did well last year. He got me some really nice returns at key moments in the season. And almost got me a second game month win in one of the months. But I just don't know if he'll have quite the same impact this year. He's also really expensive. So the question I ask myself is, I'm not going to get Bowen out because he's glorious. So, where am I going to get the budget for Watkins? And it's really hard to have Watkins and Harler side by side and to still keep the same amount of premiums that I've got in the side. So, I don't think I'll have Watkins in, but it's an easy move to him if I need to from some of the team I've got set out here.
cool. Okay. Well, thank you for running us through your draft and good luck with the tinkering. Keen
Thank
to
you very
see the
much.
final result.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. It still pains me to have so much Forest in the side, but hopefully they give me a good reason to lump them out because they're battling relegation this year, and we can watch Derby battle for playoffs and have no Forest in the side. But yeah, for now, all three look fairly locked, which is quite disappointing. But yeah, good to be here, and yeah, looking forward to the new season.
Excellent. All right. Cheers, chaps.
Cheers,
Well,
guys.
thank you. Cheers.
See ya.